What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. Monday afternoon, special time, 3 p.m. A little late here this afternoon, but thanks for being patient with us. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Action-packed show here today. First up, we're going to bring on Irwin Simon, CEO of Tilray, to talk about their latest earnings. I know there's some questions that a lot of people have had. As well, we look at the Canadian landscape and really the U.S. landscape, too, when we look at some of the beverage side of their business, which continues to flourish. As well, Shane Pennington is going to be joining in with us around 3:30. He'll talk about latest news, the DEA rescheduling. What next? They did respond. Well, they didn't respond. They turned down basically what they filed last week on behalf of Village Farms. So we'll find out the latest there. And then finally, some big news here earlier this morning. Raj Grover at HITI, about to enter into the fast-growing German medical cannabis market. We'll get the latest on what this announcement means and what the opportunity presents for HITI. So let's get into it. Welcome in AV here on a Monday afternoon. We got a long one. It's going to be about 90 minutes here today, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's a marathon. It's good that it's good obviously to have Irwin and Raj on with Tilray's earnings, HITI's German news this morning, and now we've got Shane coming on with the DEA responding, or lack thereof response as it relates to the motion.
Yep, that'll be good. So first up, let's bring in the CEO of Tilray, which trades with the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol TLRY. And that's not a green screen. That's an actual fridge behind you. That's a great setup you got there, sir. Irwin Simon, good to see you. How are things?
Thank you very much. And good to see you guys. And great to be on with you guys, number one. And then to follow with all those distinguished guests that you have on afterwards. And congratulations to Raj on his, German acquisition, and I look forward to talking to Raj about that.
Yeah, let's I know a lot of people have seen the numbers from Friday, and I know a lot of the questions have been asked, like, what's your take on it all? We're seeing a common theme in the cannabis space right now where cannabis revenue pretty much is flat right now when you look at the overall factor in the U.S. with cannabis reform being at a stalemate, plus the excise tax in Canada right now. Beverage continues to grow. So based off of that, like, how do you tackle, I guess, the idea of the revenue being flat, cannabis here in 2025, given the fact that some things are out of your control? Because let's face it, sometimes people say kind of humorously, the richest Canadian LP in cannabis is the Canadian government. And I don't think the U.S. government is far behind that. But how do you address that?
So number one, if you come back and look at our Canadian cannabis business, our international cannabis business grew double digits and grew substantially, but it's a much smaller cannabis business. If you look at Canada, there's a big focus with us on profitability. And with that, what we've decided to do was focus on the products and the product mix that are going to be profitable for us. With our 5 million square feet of grow, there's lots of wholesale we could do. One of the fastest growing categories is vapes. And with that, with our vape business today, it was not a profitable business for us until we retrofitted some of our facilities. So purposely, there's a lot we've done in regards to our profitability, and there's a lot we've done to ensure, we'll pull back in sales. The other big thing is new products. We're going to launch about 50, 60 new products that will launch in the back half of the year. So from a timing standpoint, that ultimately will affect sales. Stepping back, guys, listen, every time I'm on here, I talk about it, is the excise tax in Canada. And just come back for a second. Tilray, Hexo, and Afria, with price compression that's happened in Canada, we've probably had about $250 million of price compression over the last 3 years. And that's prices that have come down. So you take that, and that affects our bottom line. But more important, with that, is excise tax. Tilray as a company pays approximately about $155 million in excise tax and other Health Canada fees. So step back for a second. And I say this all the time, the richest cannabis company in Canada today, is the Canadian government. There's about $1.2 billion to $1.5 billion in dollars collected from the Canadian cannabis companies. And with that, it's just real difficult to make money in the cannabis industry in Canada. Number one, with the number of LPs out there, and a lot of them have, either gone bankrupt. They're still in the illicit market that pay no excise tax at all. With that, just again, Canada, what is it, 35, 40 million people, and there's 3,000, stores out there. So it's just difficult out there because of the excise tax that we're all paying, and because of price compression.
When I look at the uncertainty surrounding that country now from an economic level, we just had a prime minister that basically resigned last week, and there's a lot of important initiatives that they're going to focus on. I did have an interesting conversation last month with OGI, Village Farms, and Canopy, and they talked about how they're working closely with each other to bring this excise tax concern more to the government. There has been talks that the government will review this in 2025. We also heard from another executive last week that don't hold your breath. This is going to take a couple of years. But first question, are you seeing more and more, you plan to work more and more with other Canadian LPs within the country to push this narrative forward? And if so, what's the approach you take when approaching the government to change it?
So listen, number one, all of us got to work together. And, there's a lot of great Canadian cannabis companies out there. And together we will, ultimately build a great industry in the cannabis world. So I look forward working with, Aurora Organic Gram, OGI, Village Farms, etc. And I think we all have the same purpose. How do we sell more products? How do we pay less taxes? The other big thing that's happening out there too is cannabis is cannibalizing, the alcohol industry, and which is, something that's happening. But today, if you go back, the cannabis excise tax is like 4 times more than beer, 3 times more than wine, or 2 or 3 times more than spirits out there. And that category is declining. So, with that, there's got to be an evening out here of how this all makes sense from an excise tax. Listen, absolutely all the companies should be paying their excise tax. But what is the fair way to do it? And also, there has been the Freedom of Information Act. Where's the money going, and what is the money being used for? And I think that's a big question out there today.
Yeah, Irwin. So, I know there's been a lot of positives within the earnings report. I just kind of wanted to tackle something before we jump into that. You have a lot of you have a cult following for your stock with Tilray. You also have a big narrative around the company in terms of, let's say, dilution and the losses that we're seeing on a quarterly basis. What would you say to investors that are kind of looking at Tilray around that lens of dilution and financial performance? Is there an end in sight to those metrics, or how are you really tackling those internally?
So let me take each one of these, okay? Dilution. When I stepped into Tilray in 2019, we were about a $50 million business, and basically only sold cannabis in Canada. And we're in the midst of getting licenses for a free diamond. And, that's when cannabis was first get going. So that number one, and we were running out of money. We were down to probably our last $20 million. And if we didn't do things, there could be, a lot of things knocking at the door to put padlocks on it.
Yeah.
And, my thing was, how did we stabilize the Canadian business? We went out and, whether it was LATAM, whether it was Europe, invested. We went out and did a lot of different things, spent a lot of money. And what my first objective was, stabilize where the mothership was, and that's the Canadian market.
Okay.
And that's very much, what we did as a company, and get out of a lot of these bad deals that we had. We had a lot of bad deals, okay? So number one. Number two is everybody's telling me, you got to go to the U.S., you got to go to the U.S., you got to go to the U.S. Well, the U.S. had nothing in place from a legalization. Everybody went out there and bought options. Everybody went out there and sort of said that's the next big mecca of the world. But what my focus was to get Canada right, and get Canada right from a profitability standpoint, to get Canada right to learn. If we were going to go into other countries, if you can't be right in your own country, how else, could you go into these other countries? With that, I knew we had to do consolidation. We went out there and did a reverse merger with Tilray, and ultimately we moved to the U.S., where we became a U.S., a U.S. company, and traded on NASDAQ and the Toronto Stock Exchange. After that, what I looked at the U.S. market is, I couldn't see the U.S. market legalized. So I'm somebody who likes to diversify.
Right.
And with that, in December of 2020, we acquired a spirits business, beer business called Sweetwater 420, which had the 420 brand. So again, we've diversified. Now we're a cannabis business and we're a beer business. Okay. At the same time, we announced the Tilray deal, which would give us, a medical cannabis business in Europe. Also gave us Manitoba Harvest. Also, what allowed us to take was Tilray really never had a manufacturing facility, a processing facility, a grow facility in Canada of any size. It would bring their grow into a Fria Diamond and a Fria One. It also gave us a facility that we could can beverages in London, Ontario. So
Okay.
with that, in a short period of time, we made some deals out there to really strengthen Afria and ultimately did a reverse merger to bring us into the U.S. market. So basically, and then a little thing, COVID comes along. So the next 2 years, we're fighting, stores closed in Canada. We're fighting on-premise closed with beer, ultimately keeping the lights on, keeping everybody safe and happy, okay? And we become Tilray. And ultimately, I figured out we're not going to see anything happen in the U.S. so quickly, but
Yeah.
how do we continuously strengthen our Canadian business? After that, went out and acquired first the debt to Hexo, Redecan, and then went on to buy, the Hexo Redecan business, which ultimately made us, the largest cannabis company in Canada. Did lots of consolidation out there from those businesses, took hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of costs out of there. And I will say this here, if we didn't do that, I'm not sure Afria, I'm not sure Tilray, and I'm not sure Hexo Redecan would have been around, just because of the debt, the size of the facilities, the cost infrastructure, and wouldn't be able to survive because of this excise tax that we're all paying.
So you really believe that if that acquisition was not made, there's a good chance that this company would not be around today?
I believe that all three might not have been around because they were all too small to survive the taxes, the infrastructure, and what was in place there and what they went out. Like Hexo had this great big facility in Maison they built in Quebec where they spent, hundreds of millions of dollars. Hexo spent a lot of money buying Redecan. Hexo went out and spent a lot of money, acquiring other businesses. Tilray went out and spent lots of money, in regards to acquiring Manitoba Harvest. Tilray went out and built this big facility in Cantanhede in Portugal, okay? So Afria had this facility in Germany, had two major facilities in Leamington, Ontario. So don't forget, Canada is a great country, but there's, 40 million people and, half the population can, indulge in cannabis. So it's a small market out there. And you had all these great big cannabis companies and all this money that got poured into it. And everybody believed the U.S. was going to legalize. Everybody believed Germany, LATAM. There was just a lot of hype out there. What I tried to do was condense it and consolidate it and then consolidate it into one company. And that's how Tilray Brands came to effect in the cannabis business with Hexo, with Tilray and Afria. And
then in terms, in terms of the excise tax, we were talking to one of your peers who believed that there's about a 5-year time horizon on when we could potentially get that resolved. Do you share that point of view, or are you hearing anything, or do you have a different perspective on that?
Listen, right now, Canada is a country with a lame duck prime minister, okay? With a lame duck party. There's going to be an election called, and I don't think, with the conservatives and the liberals, the first thing on their agenda is to reduce the excise tax that the cannabis companies are paying, okay?
Yeah.
And it's just like everybody's telling me, you got to go to Mar-a-Lago to talk to, President-elect Trump. Not the first thing on his mind today is legalizing cannabis, okay?
Yeah.
So it's a situation that's there. How do you deal with it today? And that's what I'm trying to do, is dealing with it today. It's something we have, and not believing it's going away in a couple of years, and no different than not believing medical cannabis is going to legalize in the U.S. in the next year. So with that, if you can consolidate, and which we did, those three companies, and took out a couple $100 million of cost, that was a better thing that I could have control of than going ahead and believing excise tax is going to be reduced.
Very, very much so. And then talking about the future of the business, I mean, Delta 9 beverages, they were everywhere in 2024. You launched some incremental SKUs, I think it was in December, around the mocktail line with certain beverages. How big do you think that category can be, and how much are you leaning on that, let's say, to create the future growth trajectory of what Tilray is, as they do match up very well with the infrastructure that you've been acquiring in the United States as it relates to traditional beverage?
So let me just go back to your other two questions before. Talk about Canada, for instance. Right now, our beverage business for us is probably about a $25, $30 million Canadian business. We have about a 45% share. Where do I see one of the biggest opportunities in the Canadian market? If we could sell THC infused beverages in the beer stores in Canada, okay?
Yeah.
That to me is a big opportunity. And if I had to take a vote to do that or reduce excise tax, I'd rather do that because consumers are looking for beverages. So right now we're priced high and we're only limited to where we can sell cannabis infused beverages today. If you look at what's one of the biggest consumer packaged goods category out there today, it is beverages. So let me sell beverages today in the beer stores and let me sell it on tap in bars. And that is a big category out there. And I think it's bigger than flower, bigger than pre-rolls, and bigger than vapes if we could go ahead and do that, okay? So that is a $1 billion opportunity. And I say this in the U.S. today.
All good.
I say this in the U.S. today. If we could sell THC-infused drinks with hemp or cannabis in the U.S., it's a $1 billion opportunity too. So, consumers like to drink beverages. I have a beverage in my hand. You got a beverage in your hand. We start with our coffees in the morning. We're drinking multiple waters. And if you think about it, the craft beer industry in the U.S. is probably a $10 billion business, okay?
Yeah.
So take a 10, 20% of it and think about it, how big a category that is. So I think it's a major category. And I got to tell you, when I have groups together right now and testing our Delta 9 drinks and giving them, they love it. And just the biggest question is, where can I get it? So today it's legal in 17 states.
Yeah.
And, ABC Liquor, Total Wine, in markets that we're selling it, and we're seeing some great results with it.
Do you know are you forecasting what kind of growth in those 17 states that you'll get this year? Because we had Boris Jordan on last week. Seems very optimistic, very excited about this space, this industry, this specific, category, I should say, for 2025, the growth potential, and really the outlets that a lot of this product will be available. But have you factored in how big this could grow in 2025 and what kind of market share you'd like to have pertaining to it?
Listen, I think we have a big opportunity out there within Tilray because we have 700 beer distributors out there.
Yes.
And we get to almost every supermarket in the United States. We get to convenience stores in the United States, and we get to Total Wine and ABC Liquor and stuff like that. So again, if it's, just 17 states, it's a third of the states in the U.S., it could be a very, very accretive business for us. And I don't want to give you a number out there because all of a sudden I'm out there making projections and giving numbers out there. But it's something that's in our forecast today as a big growth number for us.
It's good.
So what is the catalyst to activate that infrastructure across the United States with your beverage assets? Is it like a just clear cut direction via, I don't even want to bring up the Farm Bill, but just some sort of legislation that says Delta 9 beverages are now legal coast to coast in the United States, and then you have that infrastructure to activate?
So today, with Tilray, like I said, we have 700 beer distributors. They're all concerned because they see cannibalization happening in the industry with, Delta 9 drinks or THC drinks. And, the beer industry wants to control this because they want to make sure they don't lose control if it goes somewhere else. So we have blitz teams on the street. We have sales and marketing teams on the street. So we have an infrastructure in place today that's selling, close to 15 million cases of beer a year. over 1 million barrels. So, we have 10 production facilities out there. So we're in that business today. So,
Okay.
without giving, forecasted numbers, we expect to, in those 17 states, really to do some, good business out there. And we're excited about it. And it's a good product. Listen, you drink it, you get a good feel, you get a good buzz from it with not some of the same effects of alcohol afterwards.
Oh, it's the best. As far as I'm concerned, it's the best form factor as far as THC goes, and it's the one that could potentially scale the most because you get it into the experiential channels with sporting events, movie theaters, music festivals. You're putting beverages in everybody's hands that want to be drinking beverages. Like you said, it's a big part of the American culture.
And that's a big thing within Tilray today. We're a big part. So within Tilray today, we have 18 beer brands. We have 20 brew houses. And in our brew houses today, they're restaurants, they're on facilities where we have our breweries, and we bring people together to drink, to eat, and for events. In April, we have our 420 events where we bring in music, we bring in, different bands, where we, serve our beers. Ultimately, there is, I'm sure, cannabis there, and everybody has a cocktail or a beverage in their hand. So it is a big part of what our business is, to bring people together to enjoy themselves and have a good time.
Yeah, makes sense. Look, I know you were asked this question in a previous interview late last week. It was about compensation, and I know investors have reached out pertaining to it. Given the current times, based on some of the recent earnings reports, and I know it's a question that, it's not easy to answer, but it is an answer that obviously investors want to hear from. So, I know you did mention, look, you're the largest shareholder. You've looked at the overall value of the company. It's gone from 50 billion to a billion, or 50 million to a billion under your leadership over the past 4 to 5 years. What's your message that you want to share outside of that to investors? Like, is a share buyback possibility something you consider? Like, what is the message you want to get through given these uncertain times here in the early 2025 stage for this industry? Because we all know this is a year of the moment of truth for the industry, where there could be a lot of companies not around in 12 months from now. So what's the message you want to communicate to them?
So number one, my comp is based upon several factors. We have a compensation committee. I don't just go out and pick my comp, okay? And I have to hit certain goals and objectives to get paid my comp. And, my comp, a big part of my comp is stock comp. And if you come back and what we have to report, what we have to report in a prospectus, and trust me, I got a lot of, Tilray stock when the stock is at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that gets valued at that. That stock is not worth that. That's not worth that today. I've never sold a share of Aphria or Tilray. Matter of fact, I've had plenty of Aphria options that are way underwater today. So that's number one. So majority of my comp is based, it comes from stock, not cash. So when someone says I got $30 million, that might have been the value of the stock, but that's not what it's worth today. And that's not, ultimately what I got. I didn't get a $30 million check, okay? And when that comes up, my wife says, where'd all this money go to? So that's number one, okay? And I plan to keep every share, and I've bought shares, and that's ultimately how I get paid here. From a standpoint of where Tilray is and where Tilray is going, we're creating something different and unique out there. And the big thing is, if you look at, we got a strong balance sheet. We have close to $250 million of cash. We have convertible debt that's not due to 2027 at a 5% rate. We have some bank debt, of course, on our beer businesses. But we have cash to do acquisitions. And this cash came from the ATM. And you asked me before about dilution. And one of the big things, what I've said, is this here. Our Tilray cash is going to be used for accretive acquisitions out there, not for operations. And that's what's important out there, is not for the operations. In this here quarter, when you saw our GAAP number, it showed we lost $84 million. 82 of that is non-cash, okay? And that is for stock comp, depreciation. And ultimately, the cash that we used in this Some of it was to settle previous lawsuits and that for some of these businesses. You got to remember, we've done, as we've done the Montauk acquisition, the Sweetwater acquisition, the Anheuser-Busch acquisition, the Molson acquisition, a big part of that is bringing these businesses together. We've invested money in these businesses, whether it's advertising, whether it's infrastructure. And when you're building out a new business, you got to invest money. So that's where a lot of our, cash is going to. All our businesses make money. And I will say this here, one of the big things, and I see it from Tilray standpoint, being in the cannabis business, our insurance is much, much higher than just a normal company. Being a public company, we have public company costs. We have multiple millions and millions of dollars we pay for all our licenses out there in regards to running our systems. So there's a big, big infrastructure cost that we have in place today. And if we have those costs at Tilray at $1 billion size, some of the things I come back and look at how do these smaller companies, are able to achieve these things. The other big thing is we invest a lot of money in our people, and that is making sure that we have great quality control out there, that we have lots of processes in place today from our finance group, from our sales group, from our operational group. So it's important for us that we really have a good company out there. And a big thing is invest in people and infrastructure for the growth here.
I want to ask one question we got from one of our viewers. It's a good one. How does Tilray plan to compete with U.S. multi-state operators once federal legalization progresses, given MSOs are currently well-positioned? What's your response to that?
So my thing is this here. I come back and say, and I believe during this Trump administration, cannabis will legalize, okay?
You do?
I do believe that I think cannabis will legalize from a medical standpoint. Okay?
From medical, okay.
Recreational, he will leave it up to each of the states. And you've seen that from some of his other actions out there. So if it legalizes medically, that ultimately takes care of safe bank, and it also takes care of rescheduling, okay? If Tilray tomorrow that happened, we could be in the medical cannabis business within 90 days. We got a good-sized medical cannabis business in Canada. We make all these different products. We have a good-sized medical cannabis business in Europe. So from a standpoint, and today in the U.S., the medical cannabis business is legal in about 35 states. If it was legal in all 50 states, it's an $8 to $10 billion business. If Tilray got into that business, which I do believe through our Canadian operation, we could be in business. And if we got a 3% of that, it's a $300 million business for us. It would be a very profitable business. Today in Canada, we have the ability to grow, in our multiple facilities. We use today about 175 metric tons. We have the capability of growing about another 130 metric tons. The thing is this here, if cannabis legalized in the U.S. today, there's very few, and I'm not sure if there's any facilities out there that are big enough to supply the U.S. like we have in Canada today, and Tilray could. And again, that's me hoping that they allow us to export cannabis from Canada into the U.S. No different than Europe does today on product that's GMP EU certified, okay? And I'm not sure why they wouldn't allow us to do that. So again, hypothetically, if cannabis got legalized and they legalized just medical cannabis in the U.S. from a federal standpoint, Tilray could be into it very quickly. If they allowed us to ship product from Canada into the U.S., we would need about 60 metric tons. We have the capability of doing that. We could be in that pretty quickly. If they go ahead, and again, I believe they leave it up to each of the states of how it is today, and they want to legalize it from a recreational standpoint in each of the states. And that's not a business that Tilray ultimately would get into. It would be just the medical cannabis business.
Irwin, do you believe that'll happen? They'll allow you to export cannabis into the U.S.? If so, do you have any examples or conversations without naming names that make you believe that?
Listen, I will say this here, and this is just my belief. The Trump administration is about dollars and tariffs and stuff like that. if they see the tax dollars that are collected in Canada today, and they multiply that by 10, and with that, they see the opportunities to collect those additional tax dollars, is number one. Number two is, again, the Trump administration is about, again, getting rid of illegal drugs, getting rid of fentanyl, getting rid of this. And the only way you're going to ultimately do this is to legalize it and have a process in place how you're going to police that. And that is something that has to happen. So that is why I believe something will happen here. And something's got to happen. I mean, there was lots of promises out there during the Biden administration. Nothing happened. And I will tell you this here. There's lots of great research coming out that the reason medical cannabis is something that's very helpful in a lot of patients out there for sleep, for anxiety, for pain, for cancer patients out there. And you want to talk about, drug prices and the president wanting to reduce drug prices. Cannabis is an answer to a lot of those, different medical issues that we're having today, and a lot of, medical prices out there that we can get rid of a lot of these opioids and other products.
I think people that are learning this space need to understand how much more advanced medical cannabis companies in Canada and internationally are more advanced than U.S. companies. Yeah, Anthony, is that correct? When I mentioned something like that, I would assume that was the case. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's factually correct.
Yeah. Have you factored in, though, if that were to happen, we hear this story, ongoing trade wars and tariffs involved with the Trump administration, I guess that's maybe getting a little bit far down the road. We need to get, obviously, medical cannabis legalized first, but I'm assuming that's obviously stuff that will come to fruition, but that's maybe a good problem to have once you're there. But you truly do believe under this Trump administration, times have changed. We will get some sort of reform and legalization under his administration is what you're thinking.
Listen, Trump was supportive of it during the Florida vote, okay?
Yeah.
And it didn't pass. I mean, it was 53, 54%, and it needed a 60%. So I do believe, not that, Trump comes back and looks at that it's a user. It's about dollars and cents, and it's about, getting rid of the illicit market and how you police this. And that's something that, he and his administration are very much in favor of.
Yeah. Listen, appreciate you catching up. Listen, all the best moving forward into 2025. And again, thanks for checking in. Hope our viewers got a lot of good feedback from you. But let's keep in touch, okay, Irwin?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and look forward to come back anytime. And I appreciate the good, candid discussion here because, I want to make sure we get those answers out there. And you're right, we have a good following, but I want to make sure when you buy our products or buy your stock, you know what you're getting.
Well, I'm going to have to ask that question to our next guest pertaining to legalization. He might have a pretty good idea, but I'll make sure that I get back to you on what his response will be. But Irwin, appreciate your time, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Tilray on the NASDAQ, the ticker symbol TLRY. And will legalization or some sort of cannabis reform come into play during the Trump administration? I don't think you and I know, but I think there is somebody that might have a better idea. Let's welcome in probably the top cannabis attorney, Shane Pennington, partner at Porter, Wright, Morris, Arthur, LLC. First time to the podcast. Good to see you. How are things?
Great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, appreciate you taking the time. What'd you think of that? I don't know if you got to listen to on the back end, but Irwin Simon's response on some sort of cannabis reform or legalization taking place under the Trump administration. I'm sure you would probably have a better understanding of that right now, but what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with much of his take. The question is always timing. I think he's right to focus on medical. He said about what we've heard from the Trump administration and what we see out there. That is sort of a rational read of it. I just think, when I'm advising clients, all them sort of worst case scenarios and what risk factors to be aware of. That's sort of my job. And when you're looking at it from that perspective, at this point, I think we believe it when we see it. It's sort of a trust approach, but certainly the tea leaves that he's reading, he has a rational read of them for sure.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to get into the point where that's the reason why I want to have you on. Last week, Village Farms company that you counsel filed a request to consider the previous motion to disqualify and remove the DEA from its role in the proposed rescheduling of marijuana from a Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, which we've been paying close attention to. This new request included evidence claiming that the DEA's negative attitude towards the proposed rule has hurt the chances of rescheduling. They have since shut that down. So based off of this from last week and then the news that we got today, what's next? How do you prepare? What are the next steps that I guess people that are following this debate should be paying attention to?
Yeah, so we filed this most recent motion because there's a lot of secrecy surrounding how DEA is paying attention. We'll see that DEA, as opposed to DOJ, has been pretty vehemently opposed to rescheduling every step of the way, and they seem to still be, based on everything that if you're paying really close attention. And to be fair to people out there, some of the proceedings are public. If you work hard enough, you can usually get your hands on most of the documents. But as the people who are in the arena see everything, and even what we see, DEA is hiding the ball on a lot of it, including everything about how these 25 participants got in there and why the ones that were chosen were and the others weren't. And hiding the ball in that way, that's first of all just illegal. And second of all, it makes you wonder what they're up to. And so it's a little bit scary as we head into this hearing, not knowing what we don't know, I guess. And as far as what you should be looking for, we should all be watching very carefully for what the administrative law judge, the ALJ, as I'm going to call him, how he ruled requests that we put in front of him. So he got DEA's response, which we saw just this morning, and it's a nothing burger of a response, just a lot of ducking and dodging. They don't answer any of the things that we raised. It's now kind of in the ALJ's court, and we certainly hope that he will order them to disclose everything so we can get a better picture of what's been going on behind the scenes with DEA's collusion with the prohibition. But if he doesn't, then we have to fight through the hearing, and we'll come out the other side with a record at least of everything that's happened.
Yeah.
So in the original 12-2 hearing, the ALJ had mentioned to the DEA that they weren't able to submit the comments from the public comment period into the record as evidence. And I think the DEA, didn't they file the comments with their... Is that just alluding to the theatrics that the DEA are trying to turn this hearing into? And has the ALJ commented further on that since then as to like what's going on? Like DEA, like, are you listening or no?
Yeah. So I can only tell you what I know, which is that the ALJ did rule on. So DEA tried to get the comments in. It put them all. The ALJ said, "I'm not accepting 43,000 comments." So DEA tried to winnow it down to what wasn't repeats, basically, and they tried to file it on a bunch of CDs. You remember the metal discs that we used to use? They filed 4 of those with something like, I don't know, 11,000 public comments.
Okay.
And they tried to put them, excuse me, I have a cough. They tried to put them into the record through the system where we upload our exhibits. The ALJ immediately shot that down and said, I'm not going to be able to quote it right now, but he basically said, I know he used the word that it was a stop, they would disobey a direct order from the presiding officer of the hearing, and said, no, you can't do that. Okay. Now, to many, my clients and a lot of different parties, I'm representing Village Farms as their counsel of record in the hearing, but I'm also representing a lot of other groups that didn't get in, some that did, so forth. So I have a lot of emails that hit my inbox all at once, and half of them are like, isn't this great news? Didn't he just bop DEA on the head for this astonishing transgression?
Yeah.
And yeah, he did. But remember, 99% of those comments were good for and so it makes you wonder if your DEA is the strategy to make it look like you were trying to get that evidence in, just like it looked like they were trying to subpoena HHS witnesses, and they know the judge isn't going to let those comments in. And so it's a good way for them to continue to look like they're taking steps to quote unquote be the proponent of the rule, when in fact, when you look at what they're anti-Schedule 3, if you look at the actual exhibits that they're putting in and the witnesses that they've put on, it's all negative. And so, for us, it's sure nice to get some ALJ head of DEA's direction, but the real test will be, what does he do with the scandal that they foisted upon the public here with the rest of it, which we will know in the coming days.
And Shane, then real quick, I just want to mention something real quick. Your audio is cutting in and out. I don't know if it's from your headphones or something like that. I just want to make sure we get the best audio, because this is really good information right now. But
let me take them off and we'll see if it works better that way.
Okay. Yeah, maybe try that. Can you hear us? How's that?
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, much better. Yeah, much better.
So Trump takes office next week on the 20th. He's already put forth a potential new appointee for the head of the DEA. Got shot down. It's been crickets since. Yeah. How much does this drama with the DEA matter if you are a believer in the thesis that Trump does support rescheduling, that Trump's potential new head of the DEA would also support rescheduling, then what does all this matter right now as far as the DEA theatrics in
a ton
regarding the ALJ?
A ton. It matters immensely, because we're in a formal administrative proceeding and we're building a record, and it's either at the end of the day going to result in a final rule rescheduling cannabis or it's not. And if it does, that is a massive historic win of a gravity and a level and a proportion that I don't think many people appreciate, because it would reverse 50 years of intransigence from the federal government on this. If we don't, and we get a final rule that keeps cannabis in Schedule 1 or moves it to Schedule 2 and doesn't abide by the recommendation of DOJ, HHS, FDA, NIDA, the OLC, 38 states, and however many 80% of the American people, then that will be we'll be stuck with the record that we built in this administrative proceeding. In other words, they can't watch this show and listen to the very intelligent commentary that's happening here and say, you know what, this looks scandalous. They have to look at what's in the record, what was actually put into evidence in the administrative process, and that will be what will determine this. Now, you're asking a bigger question. If the administration comes in and they're on our side, doesn't that mean that they could just sort of shove it through, right? And you hear this kind of talk a lot, but we heard it. You'll have to remember, everybody should judge this based on what we heard with Biden and Milgram. And so we have a future Attorney General Bondi, right? And we have President Trump, but Biden was supportive of the rescheduling move. He's the one who put it forward in the first place. And so it boils down to, are they different types of leaders who will take different approaches to getting things done in the executive branch? And I know there are a lot of people who think, well, yes, he is, obviously. But again, I'm not saying you shouldn't feel that way. I'm not telling people that I know better than you do how to read what different executive branch appointees are going to do or aren't going to do. What I'm saying is, we have to fight this fight with every bit of energy and resource that we have, both to build the record and to try, because we don't know what we don't know. We don't know exactly where Trump will be at the time that he needs to make a decision on this. We don't know how long that might take. We don't know who's going to be in at DEA. If he doesn't get an appointee in soon, right, then you're going to end up with an acting person at DEA, which usually is someone from the ranks of the current DEA. And right now, what we know about the folks in the current ranks of the DEA is that they're colluding with the prohibitionists to try to thwart the Schedule 3 proposal, which again is extremely troubling. So we would need to get somebody in fast. It would have to be a priority for the administration. And if they wanted to get it done, then they would have to take obviously a stronger and more aggressive approach than the Biden administration and Attorney General Garland did, right?
Okay.
And so that would be is like the idea of submitting this motion last week, just to making sure that this is secure to avoid any kind of litigation or lawsuits like later on down the road. Like, the
we
rest
want a fair and transparent process first and foremost.
Yeah.
Listen, if we got a fair shot at this, even with one hand tied behind our back, we'd win because we're right. The science is on our side. All of this evidence, which I won't take the time to adumbrate for you, right? But like we have a lot. We would win. In order for us to lose, they have to fight dirty, and they have to cheat, lie, steal, hide, duck, dodge, all those things, and they have to get away with it. And then they have to hope that President Trump isn't the savior that people think, and then they have to hope that Congress wouldn't do something about it at the end. So in the long run, I'm still confident that we will eventually prevail.
How much does go ahead, finish your thought.
I just want to say that it is about litigation in the sort of medium term, because I can't assume that President Trump is going to come in and fix all this. I don't know how he would or when he would. I don't know those answers. And so for my clients and where I am sitting here in the arena, right, I have to try to win. And winning means trying to win in the administrative process. If that doesn't work, it means winning in litigation. And by the way, if we do win, there's going to be litigation anyway. So we have to win that. So no matter what, yes, that record in the short term is the big prize. It's going to be the historical record of what happened in this proceeding. And then down the line, we can start turning to these other sort of, I call them guerrilla tactics, right? To try to get this done.
I think it's important what you just said there, though. Even if you win, there's still going to be litigation down the road,
of course.
Right?
Do you think that Bill Barr and Sam and all these prohibitionists have been willing to break the law and do all kinds of crazy stuff to get this done are just going to roll over if we win this hearing? I doubt it.
Hence the reason why.
So with as far as the ALJ goes, how much weight does the OLC memo carry in all of this? Because from my understanding, the OLC memo, I don't want to call it the hammer and the nail, but it without a doubt validates the process that the HHS carried out to make the recommendation for rescheduling in the eyes of the law. Correct?
So here's how OLC works and where it is in the hierarchy. And this is important and it's nuanced. OLC is the highest statement of law in the executive branch, short of the attorney general or the president. They're the only two people who can overrule it.
Okay.
It's almost never overruled. And we know that the attorney general already backed it. So you have a super duper law in the executive branch that's binding on every agency and every member of the executive branch on the law. So that's on, is the CAMU test, the currently accepted medical use standard that HHS used, is it permissible? Yes, it is.
Yes.
Can DEA just rely on the 5-part test that it had before or FDA approval for that standard? No, it may not. That was, quote, impermissibly narrow. Can they say that the treaty situation can force it into Schedule 1 or Schedule 2? No, they may not, right? Okay. These are binding. Now, importantly, DEA has ignored them since. The evidence that it's putting on is all using the old standard. It's going out in public in all kinds of documents and taking positions contrary to the OLC opinion. This underscores just how crazy desperate DEA is, but it doesn't change what the law is. So when we go to court, a court could overrule OLC, but that would be a really, really high.
Can the ALJ?
Law. The ALJ may not. No, the ALJ may not on those legal standards. Okay. Now, here's where the nuance comes, and it's a little bit tricky. So I wish this were simpler, but underneath the legal standard is how it's applied. So let's just take the CAMU test. It says where there is some scientific evidence for a particular medical indication, right? And then there's all this state support that's enough to show a currently accepted medical use. Well, that's some scientific evidence supporting piece.
Yeah. That
standard is binding, but they could look at the evidence. There could be new evidence in the hearing that could come forward that would undercut the factual basis. There's the legal standard, then there's the facts that support it. The legal standard is binding, notwithstanding DEA's continued recalcitrance, right? But then there's the facts that support it. And I know that that's very nerdy and tricky, but that's what we're up against, right? Because in this hearing where we're fighting with one hand tied behind our back against a cheating opponent, we have to still save that factual basis.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. With that, one of the highlights of the 12-2 hearing was when Judge Mulrooney looked at CADGA and kind of scoffed when they alliterated to, hey, we're going to try and disprove the OLC memo. He was basically saying, like, good luck in real time.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you
I'm
see this?
I'm hoping that he's impartial, because doesn't he also fall under the circus tent of DOJ and DEA, or is he supposed to be impartial as an ALJ?
Hold
Well,
on. Are you
first
allowed
of
to
all-
comment on that? Are you allowed
First
to
of all, we
comment?
have to get a visual. I like your visual of a circus tent, but we have to think. Normally, you would think there's a big circus tent, DOJ, with DEA under it, and the ALJ sort of working for DEA under that, that's supposed to be independent. But here we have DEA taking itself out of the circus tent of DOJ, doing, because remember, the OLC is part of DOJ, and it overruled DEA, and DEA is still like, well, we don't care. So now you kind of have a couple of tents. You have the DOJ tent, which did support us, but for whatever reason has been MIA during this whole process, which if somebody knows the answer to why, I would love to know that answer. No one knows. But there's the DOJ tent, which I'm not prepared to call a circus yet, because they did help us get here. Then there's DEA, which is most definitely a circus, which is over outside of that. The ALJ, he is a DEA employee, but there are rules and standards that keep him independent. And there's a lot of record public stuff that shows that he's not a DEA hack by any stretch. And he's gone to great lengths in his orders that he's written in this thing, which, you know, if anybody has the time to peruse them, I have. And he's not an idiot. This guy's not a dumb guy. And he is certainly aware of what's going on. Whether and to what extent he's willing to, you know, call DEA out for some of this, we're about to find out, because
Interesting.
everything's in front of him.
How do you see it playing out?
I mean, $1 million question.
My hope is that he will do the right thing
And reschedule it out. Everything will be great. Take care, Shane. Right.
Right. My hope is that he will, and that we'll get a good record. If he doesn't, there's no way, in my opinion. And, you know, again, when I'm saying things to clients, I have to be, you can't just say, don't worry about it, judicial review is a lock or something, because that's never the case. But if ever there were a record that stinks to absolute high heaven, I mean, it's not just me saying that. This is in the press. You know, it's not like the American public isn't paying attention. Everybody sees very clearly, even if you're not as drinking the Kool-Aid as I am on my side, right? With, you know, I'm obviously on one side of this, and I've been fighting it. But even people who are neutrals, there's no rational person who could look at this that could think that DEA is playing fair. So when it gets to court, I think it's going to be very difficult for an agency that's been thumbing its nose at OLC and hiding the record from the ALJ and so forth to slip one by a federal court.
Yeah.
So one way or the other, whether it's Trump, whether it's the courts, we're going to fight this to the end and win. It's just a matter of time. And if you guys will remember, I know, you know, I see you guys on social media. We talk to a lot of the same people, even though I've never been on the show. I've been telling people for years now that this was going to take a long time. And that's because I knew what we were up against in a way that many people did not. And I hope it doesn't take, it could be over relatively quickly, you know, if things go the right way, but it could take a little while as well. And how long it takes will depend on a number of decision makers, including the ALJ, courts, or possibly the Trump administration. And the Trump administration is the one that could really fast track this if they get in and make it a priority.
Yeah. Is there a reason that nobody's tried to really reverse engineer this and go back to the root and say that Schedule 1 is just not the least bit constitutional or validated in the first place, versus trying to validate rescheduling to Schedule 3?
Yeah. So the issue is if you get rid of Schedule 1, you're still stuck with Schedule 2. And so from an industry standpoint, then you're out of the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah.
And then that comes to a related point, which is, I mean, many folks who are listening, I'm sure, you know, read the blog that Matt Zorn and I used to co-author. Now it's just him on drugs. And certainly we've talked about the irrationality of Schedule 1 a lot. And I've certainly pitched to many clients, you know, let's go to the root, as you say. But when you're talking to clients who are pressured on funds and are constantly chasing safe banking, and they see that things like this take a long time, they're not willing to cough up the money. And so we can't just go on side quests chasing that stuff down. But listen, if I had a $5 million piggy bank and I could go, you know, go to town, believe me, we could burn the whole building down. You know what I mean? And believe it's not just me, Matt, other lawyers that are working on this.
Yeah,
have all those blueprints, but we need clients, we need time, and we need money to be able to get that done.
Yeah.
Nothing
Yes,
more I'd
everybody
like to
out
see
there.
than abolish the DEA.
Right.
Everybody
Right.
out there.
Best.
Everybody out there, Raj Grover, CEO of HITI, is coming up in just a moment. Last question I'm going to ask, and I think it's just an important one for people to understand. So really the reason why Village Farms filed this motion, there were investors concerned that, you know, not even investors, but people following the space, but this whole hearing could be further delayed. So maybe just one more last time, educate these viewers as to why that was then submitted and the whole reasoning for it. So that way they have a better understanding as to, you know, this is going to take a while, and if we're going to do it, let's do it the right way.
I mean, look, I just got done telling you there's a question about couldn't we do other things? And Village Farms, I mean, they are a hero of mine, and they should be a hero of everybody's, because they're the ones who've been willing to step up and fight this the right way. And there aren't that many companies out there, who are willing to do that. There are, who are willing to really put the resources behind it and get it done. And the reason is because they understand that what I've been saying for kind of a long time, that like this process is historic. And if we if we don't win, it's going to be a very big deal. And that to win is going to require a fight, that we should not expect to be treated fairly, that we should not expect DEA to play by the rules. And despite all of that, and even though they knew that people might, not like it in the short run, they understood that you think you're going to get it done faster by just writing it out. But what you're going to get is you're going to get railroaded. And then you're never going to get an opportunity again like this in our lifetime.
Yes.
And you're going to be hoping on a political solution that was supposed to work last time and it didn't. And they weren't willing to take that chance. And frankly, I think they're right to do it this way and to do it the right way. And we should have been, frankly, working this way from the get-go. And people, I respect and understand why people want it to get done fast. What I don't understand is, do they not think that that's what we want too? Right?
Yeah.
Like, we want it done fast too. It's just, it's a very involved process, and it's not something you just snap your fingers and get done. And everybody who keeps saying that, they should just look at the scoreboard and look at the last 4 years, right? None of those quick fixes happened. And what I've been saying and what we've been doing has been the process. I mean, if you look at just to go back just one point, if you look at how did we get that HHS recommendation public back in the day, that was Matt Zorn litigating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you look at how we got to where we are in the administrative hearing with the HHS memo, that was a bunch of other clients of mine, Attach, and the Coalition of Cannabis Scheduling Reform group, that put forward a white paper that did the work to get HHS and all of this on our side and to tee it up. This is how these things get done. It's not as fast as we would like, but if you try to do it faster by ignoring what's happening and being passive, you just get completely railroaded. Yeah. And you end up then with,
which has happened a lot in
nothing,
this industry.
And you're in litigation anyway, and it takes years and years to unscramble it. So that's just not something that anyone wants. And I wish it were faster, everybody. I really do.
Judging by a response, it would be great to have you on time and time again during this whole hearing process, but let the entertainment begin, I think, for sure. But here we are, 2025. We want change, and there's no better way. This gets underway, in 2 weeks, if I'm understanding, or is it
the 21st? So the day after inauguration. We're all trying to get our hotels in DC, which is fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, I don't know how much a role he plays, but I'm interested to see RFK. I heard news that he's got enough votes to be a leader of the HHS, but let's just hope we have complete different outlook and change with this new administration. But to your point, you got to be prepared for what can come, because even if this does pass, you're still going to see litigation down the roads. But Shane, listen, I really appreciate your time for checking in. I hope reviewers got a lot out of this, and let's keep in touch. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Shane.
Bye.
Man, we are just killing it today with guest after guest, but
He brings a very good point that we haven't really taken into consideration, and it's how important that record is that's being built via the ALJ. Because if it is positive, it's historic, it's record breaking, and it's almost immutable when you tack it on to everything else. that has been done in this process.
I agree.
So when he puts it that way, I mean, I do think that it is short-sighted to not fight and use every measure at our disposal to ensure that it's a positive record.
Yeah,
that's done by the ALJ.
A lot of big news and great information here today. And speaking of big news, big announcement here this morning involving Canadian I don't even want to say Canadian LP, global cannabis leader, one of the true leaders. HITI continues to perform well chart-wise and really have great information. And with that, let's welcome in their CEO of HITI. Just bringing him up at the back right now, Raj Grover. Raj, you there, my friend? I don't know if you're there or not.
I cannot see Raj.
He might be on a call right now. I'm just going to text him real quick. You ready? Oh, I think we just lost him.
Oh.
Bear with us, folks. Raj.
Ain't no biz like showbiz.
I know. We're trying to work this out. Bear with us here, folks. But yeah. Oh, his camera and mic went off for some reason. I think he's up. There he is.
And he's back.
He is back. Let's bring him up, Barnes. There he is. Good day, sir.
I am not centered. Now I'm centered. I was there waiting for you guys. And just when you were about to let me in, I disappeared. So I had to relog in. My bad, my friends.
You're back.
Second time this is happening to me. Yes.
I'm
back with a bang.
You are, for sure. Can we say Happy New Year? It's still January 13th, but let's move on with 2025. But how are you? Good to see you. It was great to see you last month in Vegas as well.
Same. Yeah, Vegas was fun. It was great seeing you guys. And Happy New Year to you both. Where's our guy, Guap?
Guap wanted to be here. I can't share too much. He's going through some personal stuff right now with some family right now, and he'd love to be here, but our thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family right now. Great guy, but he says hello and thank you, and obviously it was we're rooting for the best for the company here in 2025, and it looks like you guys are off to a great start. Big news, you announced earlier today that you have entered in to the fast-growing German cannabis medical market by signing a definitive agreement with Purecan GmbH for 4.8 million euro, and will have a future option to acquire the remaining interest in Purecan. So first up, when you look at this, I think this is more than just entering into the German market. You got to look a little bit more closely. So can you actually talk to me more about who this company is and the opportunity it presents for, I think a lot of your investors will get some important feedback and appreciate, I think, some of the information that you share.
Yeah, absolutely. My best regards to Guap and all the best to him and his family. But just moving on, so we acquired Purecan, which is an importer and wholesaler of medical cannabis in Germany.
Okay.
Very impressive financials, like we pointed out, 40% gross margins, 29% EBITDA margins, 15 million annualized run rate as of December. They run lean operations, very similar to HITI. As you know, Shad and Anthony, we've been keeping a close eye on entering into the German market, and that's been happening for the last 2 years. Yeah. We've been keeping the market informed about our interest of entering into the German market, and we've been planning a multi-pronged approach on how to enter the German market. So since decriminalization of cannabis in Germany in April, cannabis is no longer considered a narcotic, which it was prior to April of 2024. And sales of medical cannabis have been absolutely exploding in Germany. And when we look at the market, half of all cannabis making its way into Germany, it's Canadian cannabis. And guess who's the largest player here in Canada selling cannabis to Canadians? It's HITI. So we put 2 and 2 together and we're like, wait a second. We move the most amount of cannabis here in Canada, and these are the producers that are moving half of the cannabis from Canada into Germany. What are we doing? We should be the in-betweeners, moving this product with ease, because we know every single licensed producer in this country. We've known them since legalization, and we've sold over $1.5 billion of cumulative cannabis sales since legalization. Who better than HITI to facilitate these sales from Canada while the market's taking off? You know, the German market's gone from 8 tons to 20 tons in 2024, and it's expected to go to 100 tons by 2030. So you can imagine the upside and the potential of medical cannabis sales in Germany. And we already have this within our ecosystem.
What's that translate into? 1 ton, or how many tons did you say? Sorry, again, 100, did you say?
So currently it's sitting at around 20 tons. Just prior to April, it was sitting at 8 tons, and it's going to, don't quote me on all these numbers, this is the best data that I have, and projected to go to 100 tons by 2030, right?
Wow.
So that's basically, that's a 400% growth from where it is even right now.
So what's been the response so far amongst some of the partners that you work with? Like, is this an opportunity where you kind of beat them to the finish line with the idea, or they love this idea and plan to work with you? Like, how's that work?
They love the idea. I mean, look, we've been sourcing cannabis in Canada for Saskatchewan, for the Saskatchewan market directly with each one of these licensed producers for the last 6 years. So we know each one of them intimately, way better than some of our German counterparts that have to, make the contact, understand the menu that they have, and reach out to them one by one. We already do this business. We move $500 million of cannabis sales annually. So when some of our partners found out, when we started making the calls right after this, and even prior to this, keeping tight-lipped on what we were about to do, but hinting them that we are positioning ourselves to enter into the German market, we had an overwhelming response, Shad, that we want to work with you, Raj. And I'm not here to shortchange, any of the groups that we do business with already. They're going to get a fair price of what they're already getting in Germany. We're just asking them to go through our supply chain, which makes things more efficient. And everybody's super excited to jump on the HITI train. So I think, getting on with Purecan at this point gives us a tremendous opportunity to tap into our robust network and relationships and their ecosystem, their infrastructure that's already set up in the ground in Germany. You bring these two things together, I think we can build this business to some really good levels and map out a similar market share trajectory to what we have in Canada here.
You had mentioned that Germany is a large import market, and Purecan is a lot of their business is importing cannabis from Canada. As it relates to those partners that are exporting from Canada and importing it to Germany, are there supply agreements that are in place, or is that like step 2 that you're going to audit the products, look for the best to export, and then set up those that supply chain with Purecan?
Great question. So I've actually personally spoken to over 16 producers already. I was doing this in Vegas. This is where I spent most of my time in MJ Biz, besides talking to you two. I was talking to all the producers, and to my liking, what we found out is vast majority of these relationships are non-exclusive. So we can all easily get into it. In fact, they're looking for more consolidation and more efficiency in this value chain. Remember, for each producer, this opportunity is just limited to what they grow and what they can produce and sell it into Germany. But for HITI, we get to tap into every producer's reserves that they work with. We're giving them the same price that they get for their cannabis anyway, but we're making it easier for them to get into Germany. So for HITI, this opportunity is much, much bigger than any producer you want to pick. Yes, they can grow their cannabis and send it to Germany, and they're doing that already, but we can do that with 70 different groups, right? So that's where the big opportunity for HITI comes
So that's pretty much, because David Benz writes, Tilray already has CC Pharma to distribute in Germany. But what you've just outlined, that's the difference between this announcement and what they're currently doing, correct?
That's absolutely right. I mean, Tilray has exposure through CC Pharma, but Tilray is not going to source out, and no offense to Tilray, you can talk about any producer. Every producer is limited to what they are growing and sourcing within their network to send to Germany. I can source from every producer in the country. We're open agents, and we already do business with our friends here in Canada. It's an automatic partnership in Germany, outside of Canada, to build upon our existing relationships in Canada, which I believe HITI is the only company that is positioned so uniquely to do this business in Germany.
So you're the king of retail right now in Canada, and Germany, under the Pillar 1 framework, is a physician-driven market. So fundamentally and mechanically, it's a little bit different than what's going on in Canada. What are the plans to, I guess, penetrate the market in terms of, let's say, an uptake in patient and prescriptions? And is this kind of foreshadowing that you believe that Pillar 2 and further into the future will bring retail into the German market?
Yeah, so look, we don't own any pharmacies. We can't own any pharmacies by law. Only pharmacists in Germany can own pharmacies, up to 4 pharmacies. So that's a complicated part. So we are not directly going after patients and prescriptions. We are providing cannabis to pharmacies,
Got
aka
it.
our telemedicine platform that's about to get launched. And we're
Mhm.
already selling this biomass that is being imported in by kilos to other wholesalers in Germany. Now, mind you,
Okay.
Purecan's this was an inbound into me while we were doing a prospecting on who we're going to partner up, and I went and met with every single group, major group in Germany, including Purecan. Purecan stood out because Purecan has only done 200-300 kilos worth of imports. They're looking for that partner to come and take the bull by horns and take that number exponentially higher. They've been sourcing product, and these gross margins are only representing what they've been sourcing inside of Germany. So it's an exponential
Okay.
opportunity for Purecan. And yes, I do think having boots on the ground, Anthony, to your second part to your question, is having boots on the ground through this acquisition positions us even better for when Pillar 2 becomes real. The ordinance has been enacted or has been published by the Agriculture Ministry before the German government collapsed, but the government is still in a collapse situation, and that process is working itself out. But we've already now put our boots on the ground in Germany, and this will help us position and get to Pillar 2 and get into the recreational multi-prong approach that we
Yeah.
are also working on.
Okay.
So you're looking at a 400% upside the next 3 to 4 years in this market. That's what some of the numbers are coming out pertaining to this market. So I can understand why a lot of people are fixated on that. When I look at your numbers, you've generated actually $1.5 billion since legalization. Big numbers, to say the least. So how do you intend, I guess, outside of what you just outlined, leverage this opportunity in this agreement? Because there is right now 51%, from my recording correctly. And then in addition to that, there's an opportunity to purchase, I guess, the company outright later on down the road, from my understanding.
Yeah, look, that's the outlier, right, between us and any other group. We've done $1.5 billion worth of sales, cannabis sales. What is the biggest German group? There's one publicly traded company that I'm aware of, and they're within like that 50-60 million euro range annually that they're doing currently. Look at our size and look at the biggest player size in Germany. It doesn't even come close. So from that perspective, plus 50% of the cannabis being sourced in Germany being Canadian, from that perspective, we're absolutely in the best position to enter German medical cannabis market sales. And we're also aware of, which producers are EU GMP. It must be EU GMP for us to bring our cannabis into Germany, right? We know which producers are GACP certified, and you can make GACP into GMP. You can send it to Portugal, you can send it to Germany and get it recertified. So we know who the producers are. We know the producers that are in line to get onto GACP and GMP, and we have the first dibs at it because we already know these guys. We are
Right.
already working with these producers in Canada. So, my vision here, or our vision here, is to build the biggest medical cannabis menu, Shad, in Germany. Currently, if you look at the current landscape, groups have 20 to 50 strains that they're offering. There's mediocre cannabis, there's some good cannabis, but we can build a 200 menu strain card that no one's ever seen, because in a typical Canna Cabana stores, we are carrying 200 to 400 cannabis SKUs, 250 to 600 cannabis SKUs, in fact. So you can see the opportunity that we have to build a very, very large menu and an exciting menu of cannabis products, including our white label brand, Queen of Bud, that we're going to start positioning in the German market, which sets us ahead of any other group, including the native Germans that are in this business right now.
We got to get to Germany.
You're busy. You're in Vegas. You're here, but I'm sure you get to Germany
there's
too.
so many good things about what goes on over there, and I think we really need to give an understanding to our viewers as to what's going on. Like, when was this company established? How long ago? And what's their, I guess, perception on the German population? Like, how long they've been around? And obviously, it grabbed your attention for a number of reasons, right?
So Purecan was incorporated in 2018, but their real business only begun this April when cannabis was taken off as a narcotic into just a regulated substance. So that's how it all began for them. Germany's 85 million people, because of the shortage of regulatory framework, recreational framework in Germany, medical sales are exploding because it's become very easy to purchase medical cannabis in Germany in the absence of recreational cannabis. So there's a few angles that are propelling this trajectory. Like the sales are absolutely exploding. Like I mentioned, Chad, it's gone from 8 tons to 20 tons, going to projected to go to 100 tons. The 100 tons is a combined approach between medical and recreational, but if and when that happens. But let's just say, if for any reason, if it's delayed or it's slow, a lot of this juice is first going to come into the medical market before it goes to the recreational market.
How are you looking at the EU as a whole? Are you looking at Germany as the entry point and then evaluating the other markets as to when you can penetrate those markets? Or is it kind of like get into Germany, the TAM is big enough, develop the business there, and then everything else is kind of tangential for the time being?
Look, Germany is the biggest and the most exciting market for us in Europe. So we were absolutely targeting Germany, but it also becomes a first step into entering other European medical cannabis markets, such as Poland and the UK. Once we have a home base, we've got our feet wet. We've sent a couple of shipments, game on. We're going to start looking at other markets. So that opportunity is always there. But Anthony, remember, our core business is our discount club model, brick and mortar. Nothing is changing around that. In fact, we just keep on making that model stronger as well. When I can go and get 40% minimum margins, we're trying to improve this margin profile. If I can go get 40% margins in a side business while I'm catering within the same ecosystem, leveraging the same ecosystem that we already have in place, this really helps waging a war here that we've been doing over the last 6 years and gaining market share rapidly. When we are, selling our cannabis here, our gross margins at HITI are, 26, 27%. You look at the German market, we're talking about 40% to begin with. So all of this also helps strengthen our core brick and mortar business here in Canada.
Yeah, well, Anthony, we talked last week with an executive in Canada, talked about focus is on export, because when you look at the current excise tax in Canada and a surplus of cannabis, you can understand why exporting is going to be a top priority for a lot of Canadian companies to, scale. Raj, when was the first time that you went to Germany to talk cannabis? How many years ago? Any idea?
I think it was about 3 years ago, Shad, when the conversations picked up in Germany that it's getting ready to look at recreational cannabis seriously. I think that's when it started for me at the ICBC conference in Berlin. Since then, we've made a lot more moves in Germany, which we will share in due course when the time comes, that multi-pronged approach that we are talking about. But I think we started about 3 years ago, and since then I've had a few trips.
That's just it. Like when I look at some of the industry events that we've attended, like Benzenga in Florida, you're never there. You're actually at conferences over in Europe. And from the first time that you went 3 years ago, outside of all the news that we hear about, but boots on the ground conversations that you've had, how much has a country like Germany progressed about cannabis education, reform, the overall business aspect and research side of it over the last 3 years from your own personal experience?
It's come a long way from 3 years, right? 3 years ago, it was still a narcotic. Now it's not.
You're right.
3 years ago, there was no talk about Pillar 2 or recreational cannabis shops or Pillar 2 pilots that we are talking about today. But now hopefully that's becoming a reality. The country is very seriously considering it. 3 years ago, Germany was supposed to follow in Canadian footsteps because it's already been done. This business is already established in Canada. We're already commencing these sales for a long time here in Canada, and Germany was going to follow Canadian footsteps. It's carved out its own path, which is actually seeming to be a lot more profitable than what we are used to here in Canada because of the way they're doing it. So Germany's carved out its own path, but I've been very impressed so far, so good, how that market's going. Recreational framework is a bit slow for my liking, but thankfully with this entry, we don't have to be desperate. We've got a ton of growth ahead of ourselves in Canada. We're looking at over 300 stores here. We're only at 191. Now we've got this medical opportunity. I don't have to hire 70 employees, for this medical business, right? This is being run with just 3 employees currently, producing 15 million. Yeah, three employees full time, and then some part time work for when the shipments come in and get repackaged. But think about that, making 15 million euro, 30%, 29, 30% EBITDA margins with just 3 full time employees. I couldn't be more happier with that setup.
Got an important question from one of our viewers. Can you please ask why everything is out of stock at Queen of Bud? Higher sales, problems with logistics? That's a question that somebody just asked.
Amazing question, and thank you for asking. We sold out of candles, so let me walk you through, spell it all out. for you guys. So candles were sold out within 72 hours of launch, which was unbelievable. I did not have that expectation with Queen of Bud candles, but they're beautifully done. They were gone. We launched Zippos, which are now also launched in 180 countries. Queen of Bud lighters are now available there as well at a wholesale level. And Ashley had already built this part before we actually purchased the company. And we sold all of the Zippos that we procured from Zippos within 7 days of launching. That was also gone, to our surprise. And we launched, I believe, 5 cannabis SKUs. 2 provinces were launched, 2 are coming up. And all of those products were sold out immediately. And our suppliers working on more raw materials, such as rose petal cones that have to be procured from a particular supplier. So there are things like that, but I couldn't be in a better position to say people are absolutely loving Queen of Bud and I'm sold out on everything. I did not think that I'd be in this position and telling you this, but that's a good news story for High Tide. Candles are en route, should be stocked very shortly. Zippos are en route, should be stocked very shortly. And licensed producers are working on doubling to tripling the initial orders that we purchased for Queen of Bud.
What would you say what is your goal 2025, both personally and professionally? I can't believe the energy that you have, but I can understand why people are very impressed with the direction of the company based on effort, execution, logistics. But this is great. These are great stories to look at in this industry as it continues to grow and evolve.
No, thank you, Shad. Look, the goal is to just keep moving the High Tide story forward, right? Yep. Stay within the ecosystem, understand our value chain really well, keep that promise that we made to our investors that our ambitions are truly of that of a global cannabis company. Yes, I don't get to play in the US. I talk about it a lot. I've stopped talking about it because now Germany's become real. So with these moves, we continue to instill confidence in our investors that we keep our money where our mouth is. And we are executing and we will continue to execute. Nothing's changed with our core business of brick and mortar. We just launched an international loyalty project, which was a major lift. It took us good 6 to 8 months to do that. Now we're signing elite members internationally. We've expanded our Cabana Club internationally. With this piece of the puzzle coming in and our first couple of stores in Germany, when we can put it up, we are a real international story. So, I want to compete with the big boys in the US, big boys and the big girls in the US. And hopefully with these approaches that we are making, 2025 will be the year of High Tide.
It was such a great surprise to see you and Omar. We were actually at an event and we all had to keep quiet. And all of a sudden, Anthony and I kind of looked over and then you looked over this way and it was just like, it was great. But listen, appreciate obviously seeing you in person and for logging on here today. Congrats, obviously, on the news. And I think a lot of investors will be watching this, how this transpires and develops over the coming months. Okay.
Looking forward to it. Thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks, Raj. Keep in touch. Man, what a great story that is.
Yeah, it's going to be good to see. Can't wait till Raj comes south of the border into the States.
I know.
Surely, slowly but surely, we'll get it right down here.
It's almost like a WTF type announcement, or like the idea when you think about it. Like, as we said, excise tax, exporting Canadian LPs. They want to obviously export a lot of their product into Germany, which is fast growing. And then when you look at this definitive agreement acquisition with the established relationships, it's a great opportunity.
Trump has just announced that he's going to do an executive order as it relates to crypto on day one.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, there goes Bitcoin.
We'll see. Jay Powell said that they can't hold Bitcoin in the Federal Reserve, which would kind of nullify the Bitcoin reserve notion. But we shall see. The fact that he's already talking about crypto and some sort of executive action on day one bodes well for the industry, and hopefully he can get to action on cannabis sooner rather than later.
Yeah. What a show today.
As Shane alluded to, Trump and the DOJ coming over the top and forcing something is not out of the realm of possibility. It's just not advised to be betting the farm on that right now, which I think is sound logic.
A lot of great responses from people. Appreciate all the feedback. Give us a like if you can. Reach out. if not for us, give it a like out for Raj. He'd love to see stuff like this. What a great show here today. Almost 90 minutes in. Irwin was good. I thought Shane was obviously phenomenal with what he educated us. And
Irish, I don't think his bullish tweet on crypto is good for cannabis at all. I'm just reciting a data point that he did say he's going to do an executive order as it relates to crypto on day one. And we were actually talking about it with some people today as the current Senate Banking Committee, one of the lowest hanging fruits to get, let's say, safe in the conversation in the Banking Committee is going to be to go after Senator Lummis as it relates to her stablecoin bill, which if Trump starts to do EOs all over the place as it relates to crypto, she might not have to put that stablecoin bill forward, which could stifle that.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it. Thank you for sending over that question too. I was glad to get that over to Irwin. Here's something I would actually say too, Anthony, is this has nothing to do with cannabis based off of that announcement. But what does give hope is that early signs show that this administration is going to start looking at a lot of things that people have been talking about over the last couple of years differently. And crypto starts the conversation.
It's going to also go into his mantra of promises made, promises kept. So
good point.
I'm not going to get sensational like Shane had alluded to, and like Irwin had alluded to as well. No one knows the timelines of these things. We're due for something.
We are due for something. But I love the idea.
If not, then this is just destined to crash and burn. Well, which I don't think a $30 billion industry that employs 500,000 people is going to be put on the chopping block.
No, I agree. Plus, we enjoy what we do. We want to continue doing this, right?
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people reach out, and with the feedback that we've got, we really appreciate everybody for logging on here every single day. But shows like today make you feel like, wow, man, we continue to grow, and the quality of guests and the network that we have. One thing we actually did speak to a couple of people this morning. Tim Scott is the man that a lot of lobbying efforts are going to be focused on. That's the person when it comes to this banking committee. He's the guy that you got to start influencing off the top. Tim Scott, there's a name to be to pay attention to when it comes to safe banking here in 2025. All right, sir. Listen, good job on the newsletter this morning. Keep us in your thoughts as far as what do you want in your inbox in the morning by scanning that QR code and subscribing to our Baked In newsletter. Lots going on this week, and we have Big Mike from Advanced Nutrients. He's had some more conversations since we had him on last. Last time we had him on was before Christmas. He had a conversation with Brian Lanza, which was part of the Trump campaign. And he's going to be actually coming back on again on Friday. We'll keep you posted as to who we're going to have up on Wednesday. But all in all, great show. Matt Carnes, great to see you. Mark Landers, love the show. Appreciate it. Everybody that's out there. Good job. Bobby Joe Alfonso, Christopher Brady as usual. Make sure, if you can, subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. Give this video a like and leave some comments below. In the meantime, AV, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you all back here Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everyone. Hey, everybody. Stay connected here. The latest Traded Black podcast. Another great episode under the belt. What'd y'all think? Do you like what we had to say? Please leave any comments below. And as usual, make sure to subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to smash that like button, leave some comments, as I said before, and subscribe to our channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.